Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to expand a little bit on flock management and what it looks like throughout each season for my flock and kind of different things that are going on with the flock health-wise and management-wise throughout those seasons. As it is July and we are right in the middle of the summer, I am first going to talk a little bit about the summer months and what that looks like with the flock. I live in Alberta, Canada, and the summer months are very short and we soak those months up so much. Those months mean lots of rotational grazing with the animals, lots of health checks to make sure everybody is okay with the heat and all of the parasites and all of that, as well as it comes a huge part where the babies are weaned and sent to their new homes. First big thing I want to touch on is my grazing. I have chosen to rotationally graze on my farm. Rotational grazing for me, it means that ultimately my pastures can really thrive. Having lots of grazing come in there, mow it down and new growth can come up, as well as it ensures that the animals aren't grazing on really low stuff. They have less potential to get worms, which sheep are very susceptible with as they graze super low to the ground. I graze all my animals on little paddocks. I'll move them every few days dependent on how fast they grow through those paddocks. I graze them all on poultry netting. It is just mesh netting that has posts that you can step in every few feet, and I make it into a square, set it up with my electric fence charger, and then they just stay on there during the day. I send them out in the morning and then I bring them in at night and back into their winter pen. I will give them a little bit of hay at night to kind of get enough feed to last them until the morning when they get sent back out on grass. I've chosen to bring them in every night as I don't have a livestock guardian animal, so by bringing them in it ensures that they are protected from any predators that may come if they were to stay in their electric fence overnight. With having grazing being a factor in my management with my flock, deworming and FOMAGA scoring are something that are really important in my management. For the worms that we have in our soil, we use Safeguard as this kills the worms that we have. My sheep tend to get tapeworms. This is just the worm that we have in our soil. And Safeguard works really well to treat that, so I always have Safeguard on hand. So personally for myself, I do not believe in worming my animals if they do not need that, which means that I bring up the animals about once a month and I will check their eyelids through what is called a FOMAGA score. You base it off the color of their eyelids. There is a chart that goes along with it. You can find it online and you can just download it. That's what I have. Take it outside with me every time that I bring up the flock. I'm going to show you guys the chart. So here's the chart. You can see the really red one is when it shows that your animal does not need worming. However, if they are like a white, very light pink, it shows that they're heavy on worms and they need dewormer. So you check this by pulling your sheep's eyelid down, checking their under eyelid. Seeing this color determines whether they need it or not. When I bring up the flock once a month, I check each one of their eyelids. If their eyelid's white, they will get dewormer. If it is really red, then they will be left and then we'll check on them in the next month. I do that routinely, ensuring each animal is very healthy. Once sheep get worms, it takes them down very quick. Sheep are always trying to die, and worms are something that once they get it, like it takes them down, so you really have to stay on top of that. With that being said, with the sheep being on pasture, always grazing, they can pick up worms very easily, so ensuring that you are on top of that is really important. And then the last big thing that goes on in the summer, which happens in the late summer, is I wean all of my babies. I lamb in the springtime. After about 3-4 months, the babies then are weaned and they are sent to their new homes. But otherwise, that's kind of what goes on in the summer. There's grazing, FOMAGA and worming, and weaning. So after summer, of course, we head into fall. I'd say fall along with spring is one of the busier sort of months with the flock. The big thing that goes on first right off the bat, right in September, is shearing. As I raise Icelandic sheep and they have super long wool, I have chosen to shear them twice a year. The fall shearing is really good for the people who come to me to buy wool for their fiber projects, as fall fleeces are really clean as their flock has just come on off of grass. In the springtime, as they were just sheared in the fall, their fleeces are not matted and really long. By having long fleeces, it makes it harder to process as it has a harder time going through the carder. This helps a lot by getting the fall shearing done because you get a gorgeous shear off of them and your spring fleeces are 10 times cleaner by the time spring comes around. So this happens at the end of September. My shearer comes and shears all the sheep, and then after that, then we're like a few weeks and we head right into breeding. Right at the beginning of October, I start flushing the ewes, and flushing is just a term that refers to upping up their feed, so their protein. And flushing is really something that really pushes to get higher conception rates on your sheep. By having more feed in their diets, you really hope that this ultimately means that they conceive more babies. As a farmer, you're like fingers crossed for twins, because twins are really, really good for when it comes to selling your animals, because you can make a little bit more profit on your sheep. And then about 4 to 6 weeks after flushing is when breeding starts. I start in November, so breeding for me means sorting into different breeding groups, getting everybody situated, and then the rams stay in there for about 35 days. That is enough to cover 2 heat cycles for the sheep. If they didn't catch the first heat cycle, then they get a second chance on their second heat cycle. So that puts them at the beginning of December that the rams then are taken out. I totally just am thinking of this now, but I meant to add this in earlier. Just after shearing, I also hoof trim the girls. I hoof trim 2 or 3 times a year. Usually it's spring and fall. I will hoof trim the ones that are needed when I do FAMACHA checks. When you get your hands on the animal during FAMACHA checks, you can check their hooves and all that too, but usually mine only need twice a year. After shearing, I'll give them their hoof trims, and then that's really good. I don't really want to flip them around too much when they are pregnant, so I get it done right before breeding so that they have nice feet to walk on during breeding and the winter as well as their pregnancy. So in the fall, we have shearing, hoof trimming, flushing, breeding, and then we head into winter. So in the winter, ewes are already pregnant. They are happily walking around, waddling around, very uncomfortable with their baby bellies. Winter also is when they are on hay, so management looks a little bit different. The flock is transitioned to hay a little bit after shearing, kind of once the pasture starts to slow down when the cooler temps start coming in. I have a bunkline feeder and I've got the bale inside my bunkline feeder, so feeding them is very straightforward. I just put it up right against the bunk. They reach their head through the fence and that's what they eat. I feed them 2 to 3 times every day. And then along with the hay is just ensuring that they have lots of bedding. Management for them in the winter is fairly easy. It's just really making sure they have lots of hay and lots of bedding, and that gets them by through the winter, through the really cold. Don't do a lot with them as it is so cold. If there is stuff needed, then we of course do that. Those are the 2 main things that goes with the flock in the winter. And then as we head into spring, head into March, and I do my first set of hoof trimmings, as well as the flock gets their yearly vaccine of Tasvax. I do this 4 to 6 weeks before lambing. The Tasvax not only prevents the ewes from disease, it also gives passive immunity to the babies before the babies are born. When the babies are born, then they have that passive immunity that was passed on to the moms through that vaccine, and it gives that immunity until the lambs are then old enough to receive their own dose of Tasvax. And when the ewes are flipped on their bum for their dose of Tasvax, they also get their hoof trim. I really like to give them hoof trims right before lambing so that they can walk around really nice to make sure that they can care for their babies as well as they need. And then of course lambing starts. Lambing starts around the end of March and goes until the end of April. And then around middle to end of April, kind of when lambing slows down, is when the flock is sheared. And then they are ready for the summer. And then after that, then we are right back to summer and we're back into all of that. So that is kind of the management that goes with my flock of sheep. People will of course have different practices that they do with their flock. However, this is what I have grown to do with my flock. I have been raising sheep for 5 years, and this is the system that I do, and this works really well for me and my flock. There's always something new, and the months go by so fast, so you're constantly in a new season and working on different managements. It's pretty neat to be the caretaker of these guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please make sure to leave them down below for me. You can find me on all social medias at Prairie Shepherdess. I will be linking all of those links to my social medias in the description of this video, as well as I will include it on the end. Thank you guys so much for watching.